everyone, Jake here, and we recently got our first look at Super Mario RPG, so I had to steal the keys to the analysis machine to see what's different or the same for this new version on Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo's own PR says, originally released on Super NES, Super Mario RPG has been overhauled with new graphics. Now, you might think this answers the question. It's a remaster, it has new graphics, let's move on. But a closer look at the game's first trailer, I think, reveals that there may be a lot more going on than a shiny new look. But the new look is pretty cool too. So we'll talk about some of the enhancements there because I think how things look and presented can really change the kind of impact a game makes. But I want to start off with changes within the combat scenarios, then we can get into some of the more ancillary stuff. First, the primary UI for the party has been moved from the top left to the bottom right. Characters now have HP bars in addition to raw numbers, and character portraits are in the style of the original game's artwork, which we can see has been recreated on the game's box art, with everyone looking down and to the left. Now, for the uninitiated, there are these things called flower points in the original game, and they're like a stat that you use to perform special moves, kind of like a magic or mana pool. You actually had to go into the special move menu in the original game to see how many flower points were available, but obviously here, they are always visible right up front. Now, speaking of that special move menu, I think it is important to note we don't ever actually see a character select a move, and this kind of makes me think that Nintendo is hiding something, because in the original game, your characters would look at you and be surrounded by the 4 face buttons in a fun console-specific twist on the traditional RPG menu. The colors of the buttons on screen even matched the Super NES or Super Famicom colors, depending on which console you were playing on. Given that in both regions, the Switch's buttons are just black with white letters, which is decidedly less visually interesting, a part of me thinks that the menus are no longer going to be represented in this way. The characters being situated on the bottom of the screen, to me, implies a more traditional pop-up menu could appear in each column. Alternatively, the button thing could be back just in a new black and white form, and Nintendo instead just didn't want to show it in the reveal trailer because it would be something for like Mario RPG veterans to maybe be disappointed by. I do think it would be cool if there were like settings to choose how you want the menus to be displayed, so you could maybe opt for buttons colored in either of the throwback styles. Okay, moving on to the most obvious change to our battle scene, we have a large percentage meter in the lower left corner. We can presume this is called the action gauge, because at various points in the trailer, we see chained attacks granting perks to the player's party, and the first one listed here is a boost to what is called the action gauge, and we can observe that the percentage does indeed increase when an attack is performed. So, what does the action gauge do? I think it's gotta be like a big special attack. See, throughout the trailer we get clips that are kinda hard to place in the original game. Look at Bowser in his clown car with Mario and Mallow. Look at Peach with Mario and Geno. These clips feature the same number of characters that would be in a party at any given point, 3, and are highly cinematic, matching what you might expect from a super move. Further, they both take place within backgrounds that I think are just descriptive enough to match various worlds you might find yourself in, but not descriptive enough to be anywhere in particular. And I mean, we only see Bowser in his Koopa clown car at the very beginning and end of the game, and definitely not with Mallow or Mario. So yeah, I think these are super moves that you use by filling up the action gauge. Similarly, though we don't see the full party, I think this scene of Geno blasting his guns is probably taken from a super move as well. The Rainbow Road section here is particularly suspect, given we know there really wasn't anything like this in the original game. If I had to guess, the move that comes out is dependent on whose turn it is when you activate the action gauge, and your 2 other party members fill in to add additional effects. So this is probably Peach's move with Mario and Geno assisting, and this is probably Bowser's move with Mario and Mallow helping out. I kind of dig this idea because I think it's another way of encouraging you to switch up your party and experiment with what like different combos can achieve. In the original game, I'm always tempted to run squad deep with Mario, Bowser, and Mallow like the whole time, so this might actually get me to switch things up for sure. Speaking of encouraging you to switch up your party, let's go back to that bonus menu I mentioned earlier. So it looks like chaining together timed attacks consecutively will award perks, and the specific perks granted may be tied to the party member or move used. So against like a certain enemy, like this comic, you might want magic defense and use a party member that you know will grant you that. Timed attacks in general seem to be like super emphasized in this remake. We can see that there's even a visual indicator for blocking an attack and when you can do a timed hit. The original game's battle system's timing was always so simple that I think it never really tried to hide it from you, so I don't really mind this change. It looks like timed attacks can yield other bonuses here too. We see Mario use a knock-knock shell to apply splash damage to a Wiggler. Now, games like Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi have featured splash damage, but Super Mario RPG did not. Like, there were AoE attacks, but nothing that looks like the bit of bonus damage like it does here. People may be worried that this change could make the game easier, but if we're thinking about like the action gauge, perks, these bonuses, surely the game must be rebalanced with them in mind. Once again, distancing it from a straight-up remaster. Alright, now let's move away from the battle scenes and talk about what else is going on in this trailer. Let's take it from the top. Peach sits in this open field in front of Mario's house, which we'll get to in a second, but the entire area is obviously more fully realized in our remake. Pink and white flowers surround Peach in a far more organic pattern, as if to actually encroach upon her space. The background is balanced far more favorably for the hills and foliage than in the original game, giving an illusion of a world beyond this scene rather than what we see in the original, which almost makes it look like Peach is on top of the world given just how large and intense the sky and horizon is. Peach's look has been altered to more closely resemble her modern appearances, the most noticeable changes being in the specific colors of her dress and crown. Though I'd say the remake's art style definitely retains some of the round, squishy, cherubic elements of the original. Now, thanks to the graphical overhaul, we even get to see Peach smelling the flowers and interacting with the butterflies, making everything on the whole feel less like set dressing and more like part of one world. Now, we do not get to see everything turn dark and Bowser approach, as the remake's trailer opts to dip to white and cut directly to Mario exiting his house. So I gotta wonder what is going to replace this iconic SNES moment. When Mario exits his house, we see it's been renamed to the Mario House as opposed to the original Pipe House. In the original game's map screen, the location was referred to as Mario's Pad. So we're probably just aligning the names, and Pad has fallen out of style since the 90s, so Mario's House it is. Paper Mario's house is labeled like this too, so there's some consistency points for you. We can also see a bit inside the house now, whereas before it was a black void. We can't see too much, but Mario definitely has an extra outfit exactly like the one he is wearing hanging up on the wall. And what's funny about this is at a different part in the original game, we actually see the entirety of the inside of Mario's house, and what we see in the remake in this little glimpse matches up with it perfectly, from the brick pattern on the wall to that extra outfit. If you look close, there's even an empty hook for Mario to get caught on later. But in both games, Mario takes off running and jumps. It's hard to tell if this is the actual title screen reveal or just a choice for the trailer. So the original intro for the game dipped to black and then started introducing all of the party members, and then after minutes of footage, you finally would land on this ominous title screen featuring Bowser's castle. And honestly, this image, what we get in the remake trailer, it doesn't look like a title screen to me. And even the logo moving out towards us suggests that this was just an edit for the trailer, and we'll probably eventually get something similar to this title screen remastered. Oh, but wait, this is fun. Check this out. So if we zoom in really close here, you can actually spot Peach being carried away in Bowser's Koopa clown car far off in the distance, giving Mario something to chase. So I gotta wonder if this scene being paused so abruptly with the logo of the title is indicative of there being more unseen cinematic footage, giving us way more to look at than was even implied in the original game. Would be cool. Next, we land on this very familiar scene of Mario exploring a grassy environment. One weird change is that, from what we can see, the Toad being accosted by this Goomba no longer jumps in panic. Maybe he just got some courage.
I fear nothing.
Well, that settles it.
Now in this scene, the lighting and shadows have almost completely transformed the vibe, making it almost like overcast by trees and a bit foggy. We just barely catch a Wiggler exiting a stump here, so it's likely they will enter and exit from them just like in the original game. The style of these quick sand traps has been changed up to be darker, and I think something you more obviously don't want to stand on. Mario actually swims in this game rather than being a sort of decapitated head walking around, and this is a small note, but the green pipes here have obviously been made taller to more closely resemble how they appear in Mario games rather than these stout stump looking things. In this scene, I'm happy to see that the clouds are still happy, thank God, but the coin placement has changed in a way that suggests we maybe have a higher degree of control as to where we climb and hang on to these wacky plants, which sounds great to me because in the original this was some of the toughest platforming in the whole game. Next, our fire scene takes up almost the entire screen here rather than being a single strip of fire. And here we meet Mallow in the Mushroom Kingdom. In the remake, it's an extended cinematic cutscene with funny expressions, detailed castle backgrounds, and little stars even bounce off Mallow as he falls, whereas in the original, he just kinda... And while we're here, I want to call out that Peach's castle, obviously with the blue roof and the general design of it all, does not look like its more modern incarnations. So there are design aspects of the game that get to maintain their specific originality. Now, if you ask me, I would not have minded this castle being changed, as I thought this version of the Mushroom Kingdom always kind of blended together with Marrymore later in the game, but I'm definitely glad to see things like the Mystery Crate retaining its treasure chest inspired design, and all of the bosses maintaining their weirdness. I do wonder how they'll handle some of the later freaks. I won't spoil who I'm talking about though, so you can have your own nightmares this fall. So we get a glimpse at the scene in which our party member possesses the Geno doll. The tight camera hides a lot here, but on the subject of Geno, his model has been changed in a couple notable ways. First, the shade of blue on his clothing is lighter, which I think better matches the in-game sprite of the original, and his nose looks far more like a nose now, whereas it was so easy to confuse it for a mouth before. While we're talking about Geno, based on these two shots, the layout of the room appears to be more or less the same. We can clearly see the staircase is still back and to the left, and here we see a window. And the original room had a window. And I want to jump to this shot here because we have the whole party, including a full-sized Geno, looking at Bowser's castle. This is weird because the most comparable shot that I could find was, All right, hold up. This is a tiny spoiler because I'm going to show something that's totally from the end of the game now, okay? Okay, the whole party obviously positioned the same here, but Geno is small, whereas in the remake, he's big. There's a chance the party visited this spot earlier in the game before Geno is made small again, and the game has been changed to allow for the whole party to be visible here rather than just Mario, as was the case before. So I thought it was worth pointing out. But while we're here, we can also see that Bowser's castle has been enhanced a little bit, particularly with those spikes around the actual castle itself on the mountain. This remastered scene of Bowser knocking down a door really makes his strategy make way more sense to me now than it did as a kid. Plus, I love Mario's expression here and the fact that more party members get to be a part of this scene than before when it was just Mario. They even kept the sweet little welcome sign. Peach's reveal here in the Mushroom Kingdom is again highly cinematic, making great use of the dynamic camera to make the scene feel way less like, I don't know, Mary Poppins awkwardly showing up at the edge of a blue void. Come on, how sweet is this? Graphically, battle scenes on the whole never seem to suffer from having to take place on weird rectangular panels that are only suggesting a location, and lighting, shadows, the fully realized 3D graphics, they just do a great job of clarifying details that were previously pretty hard to parse and appreciate. When Mario is flung from Bowser's castle rather than just showing us a representation of that idea with the world map, it looks like Mario is really flung from this far more sinister looking area. Though I do love how silly it was in the original. He'll likely end up falling into the pipe on his house again, since we know that the pipe is still there. And now, Look at this scene. Sheesh, they went hard remastering this scene. It's got so many new colors, it's crazy. But honestly, I think the original fish sprite is kind of goated. The tadpoles have faces now too. Well, that's not right. They had faces before. They were just not as Now this is obviously the scene in which the whole party yells at Mario in Merrymore, but take it in. Look at the trees, the hills, the castle, the whole presentation, because here's how it looked in the original. Oh boy. And here you can see Mario's little mole buddy is in the minecart with him rather than, whatever's going on in this scene. Surprising no one, Princess Peach is now referred to as such rather than the outdated Toadstool moniker. Next, it looks like whenever a character or boss is introduced, they get a full-on cutscene with a dynamic camera, whereas in the original game, everything kind of just played out in your overworld view. Birdo specifically now has that ring that we're familiar with from modern appearances of the character, and which definitely was not included in the original. We can see Peach with a superstar here, which is weird since stars really only appear in Mario RPG as an overworld item that allows Mario to defeat enemies without having to engage them in battle. Since we're back in this vague desert scene though, I do think this is probably just part of Peach's action gauge move, but it could also be some kind of new story cutscene for sure. The other possibility is that this is representative of the move Peach used in the original game called Comeback that was capable of reviving a fallen ally. The only issue there is that the star obviously looks a lot different. If we look at Bowyer here, he kind of has these constantly moving crazy eyes, whereas in the original game, they really only moved when the character did a move or spoke. Valentina has been changed too, so she now has a lime in her drink instead of a cherry, making it a margarita instead of a martini. In the Japanese version of the game, Valentina's name is actually Margarita, so now the character's drink matches that. It's kind of funny to me that they're even going for this, since it's making it more clear that this is an alcoholic drink in a Mario game, but hey, go nuts, Nintendo. And I'm sure eagle-eyed viewers have already spotted that Valentina is better supported in this game as well, but we already have a video up on that, so check it out if you'd like. Now in this comparison, we see Mario take his hat off instead of flash a peace sign. There have actually been reports of Miyamoto saying he's not super fond of Mario doing the peace sign, so maybe this change is reflective of that. Ooh, and here we can see that Boshi is back. I don't really have any reason for bringing this up. I just love Boshi. Now here we can see a toy chest that was in the original game, but now thanks to the improved graphics, it's so easy to see that we've got a Peach toy on top of Rob. There's Samus, Discoon, and maybe a Stunt Race FX car. Not gonna lie, whether or not this is a Stunt Race reference has divided GameXplain staff behind the scenes. Let me know what you think in the comments and settle it for us. But the doll I'm most interested in here is actually Rob at the bottom of the toy chest, because in the original game, it was almost impossible, though if you look for it, you can kind of see some of the pertinent pixels. But here, I don't know, I see it pretty clearly, especially if we compare it to the Famicom model from Super Smash Bros. There's the corner on the back of his head, and there are his maroon arms reaching out in front. I see it. All right, now as we turn the corner here, I want to focus in on this scene because there's some weird stuff going on. First, in the original Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, there are 7 differently colored stars. None of them are really this light pink color. So already a part of me is curious if they dropped the 7 stars subtitle because there are more than 7 stars. Maybe this is a reward for the secret optional boss of the original game, but all of this would be a really huge change, and I think it's way more likely this is a recolored purple star, which was found on Star Hill. Now, if you've played the original game, you know this star is actually an unusual one because it's the only one that you can get without fighting a boss. Out of all the stars, I'd almost say that this part of the game is a little weird. It's a little content light. Now you see in the trailer footage with the pink star, Mario and company are in this generic white void. And this also seems weird to me because the location we're in is completely obscured. The original game, sure, darkened the background when you got a star, but this seems like a pretty big departure from even that, making me wonder if this is trickery on the part of the trailer to hide the area. I'm really not sure. It's a weird scene, so please let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas about what they are going for with this white void. Now, my hope is that we're seeing some cut or unused content from the original game added in here, and maybe that's why they're trying to hide it. It would be a really cool surprise for fans of the original game. For instance, I always really liked the art of the different armor pieces that characters could get in the game, and I thought it would be so cool if what you were wearing was actually reflected. Would be awesome to see. Otherwise, there are definitely some other aspects, Easter eggs, and jokes that I'm curious to see updated in this title. Like at one point, Mario transforms into a little 8-bit version of himself, and how funny would it be in this game if instead he uses his model from the original version of the game? But now I'm just getting into speculation, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this deep dive of Super Mario RPG on Nintendo Switch. I can't wait to get my hands on the game this November, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.